Hello, and welcome to this captivating episode of The History of Bigfoot, where we explore an era that laid the foundation for what would become an enduring fascination with one of the world's most elusive creatures, Bigfoot. My name is James Mallory, and today we're journeying back to the 1940s, a decade that, despite its many challenges, stood out as a transformative period in the world of Sasquatch lore. To understand why the 1940s were so pivotal for Bigfoot narratives, we must consider the social and cultural climate of post-war America. The early part of the decade was dominated by World War II and the complexities that came with it. Following the war, the United States experienced a period of dramatic transformation both economically and socially. As soldiers returned home, an industry shifted from wartime production to consumer goods. The nation's focus expanded beyond immediate survival and recovery. In such a backdrop, people craved stories that offered mystery and escape, which perhaps explains why tales of Bigfoot captured the public imagination so profoundly. Now, let's take a look at some of the notable eyewitness accounts from this time. Several more prominent stories came from the Pacific Northwest, a region that has consistently been at the epicenter of Bigfoot lore. There were several printed stories involving what is now known as Bigfoot. These stories were about the wild man of the Pacific Northwest and were published around 1941. At the time, loggers and residents in the Pacific Northwest reported sightings of a large, hairy, wild man roaming the forests. These accounts described a creature walking upright, covered in hair, and leaving large footprints. The loggers of the area, who were accustomed to working in remote and rugged conditions, were not typically the type to fabricate tales if it meant risking their livelihoods or reputations, and this gives much credibility to their stories. While specific articles are not readily accessible today, local newspapers like the Oregonian, based in Portland, Oregon, occasionally reported on these sightings during that time. Several reports emerged in 1946 from British Columbia, Canada, about encounters with a creature known as Sasquatch, the term used by the indigenous First Nations people. Witnesses described encounters with a massive bipedal ape-like creature in remote areas. Stories about these sightings were covered by British Columbia regional newspapers such as the Vancouver Sun. These reports influenced Bigfoot lore in neighboring American states of the Pacific Northwest. On the east coast of the United States, there comes a notable report from that era involving the Barden Booger in Florida. In the small community of Barden in Putnam County, Florida, residents reported encounters with a creature dubbed the Barden Booger during the 1940s. A woman riding her horse near the Etonia Baptist Church in Barden observed what she initially thought was a tall man in a raincoat. Upon closer inspection, she realized the figure was covered in fur, not clothing. Other residents told of various encounters, including sightings of the creature carrying a lantern, stealing clothes from clotheslines, and emitting a strong, unpleasant odor, with all descriptions depicting it as a large, hairy, ape-like being. These sightings were part of local folklore and received attention in regional newspapers. Since then, the Barden Booger has become an integral part of local culture. Residents have embraced the legend, with some creating costumes for festivals and others sharing stories that keep the folklore alive. As these stories made headlines, they were not only discussed in local communities, but began to spread to a wider audience through the burgeoning reach of newspapers and radio. This propagation was pivotal because it marked the beginning of Bigfoot's evolution from a regional curiosity to a figure of national intrigue. Crucially, the urban legends that formed during this time provided fertile ground for the post-war era's growing appetite for escapist stories. Psychologically, the public's fascination with Bigfoot can be understood through various lenses. Post-war America experienced a level of existential uncertainty, and people were negotiating their place in a rapidly changing world. Bigfoot, enigmatic and uncontainable, offered a narrative that resonated with those seeking mystery, and a counterpart to the uncertainties they faced in their daily lives. In some respects, Bigfoot symbolized the uncharted and unexplored territories of both the natural world and the human psyche. Adding to this fascination was the burgeoning influence of media and folklore, which played crucial roles in shaping and sustaining the country's collective perception of Sasquatch. As newspapers reported these sightings, They often did so with a blend of curiosity and skepticism, allowing for the legends to become flexible, evolving narratives that could be adapted to suit different audiences and contexts. Radio shows, which provided entertainment and news to households across America, also picked up on these stories, featuring segments or entire programs dedicated to the mysteries of the unexplained, Bigfoot included. All of these cultural elements converged to solidify Bigfoot's place in the pantheon of 20th century American mythology. As we reflect on these developments, it's essential to consider the long-term effects of the 1940s sightings on Bigfoot mythology. These stories set the stage for the enduring myths and legends that continue to fascinate people today. The sighting reports from this era became the groundwork for books, movies, and ongoing debates over the existence of this creature, making Bigfoot a symbol of both mystery and the potential for discovery. Moreover, these tales continue to reverberate within the broader context of North American history and cryptozoology. The study and pursuit of cryptids, a term used to describe creatures whose existence is not proven, have expanded and diversified in the intervening decades. However, these early accounts from the 1940s remain some of the most referenced and debated within the field. They serve as a reminder of the human propensity to seek out what lies beyond the known, capturing the imagination of generations as they navigate the line between science and speculation. In closing, the 1940s were a defining decade for Bigfoot lore, not solely because of the reported sightings, but because of how these stories were woven into the fabric of American culture. They highlighted a period when the lines between folklore and fact were intriguingly blurry, inviting endless interpretation and wonder. These urban legends of encounters from that decade serve as a testament to the idea that sometimes the stories we tell are just as significant as the truth those stories may contain. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Bigfoot sightings in the 1940s. Come back next week where we'll continue to unearth the stories, accounts, and history that have shaped the legend of Sasquatch over the decades. Until then, keep pondering the mysteries that surround us and how they continue to influence our